Okay, so next we have Gary Goforth, and Gary's going to fill us in on a little bit of things going to South of the Lake.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. There's been tremendous progress over the last year, and before I get started, I do want to commend both the Corps of Engineers and the Water Management District. The last 12 to 15 months, I think they performed outstandingly, both in their physical actions of what they've done to reduce the damaging discharges, but also the collaboration between the agencies is as great as I've ever seen it. So I did want to start by commending both agencies for those actions. Mark mentioned some of the devastating impacts of the discharges. He also mentioned that for 90 years, the coastal communities have been sacrificing our health, our resources for others. The first discharges occurred about 1923. As Mark mentioned, there was no connection between the St. Lucie Canal and Lake Okeechobee prior to the construction of the St. Lucie Canal, St. Lucie Estuary. And we don't have the Goldilocks problem that Rand talked about. It's actually quite simple. No discharges is what the St. Lucie Estuary needs. Also, as Mark alluded to, over the last decades, certainly through the C44 canal, that's what we're looking at, is kind of a time frame of flows from Lake Okeechobee to the St. Lucie Estuary. Over 70% of the water that goes to that canal is from Lake Okeechobee. It's not local runoff. Over 70%. So it provides both an obstacle and opportunity. The obstacle is that despite the overwhelming majority of the water coming from the lake, there's no project in either the state's BMAP, or Best Management Action Plan, or the Water Management District's Watershed Protection Plan to treat Lake Okeechobee water. How does that happen? Not a single project despite over 70% of the water. So that's the obstacle. The opportunity then is add projects. Mark mentioned the sediment. The sediment doesn't get a lot of attention, but the sediment is a tremendous source of problems for the estuary. A simple sediment sump upstream of S80, something that was done in the C51 canal down in West Palm Beach, is a very cost-effective way to remove a majority of the sediments prior to entering the estuaries. So we've got obstacles, we've got opportunities. Mark did mention the nutrient loads and the sediment loads, and just by perspective, almost 6 times the TMDL for the C44 during 2013 was generated by the lake charges. In other words, there was 6 times the state level was sent to the estuaries by the government. So how in the world can the local communities be expected to achieve the TMDL when factors outside their control are providing the vast majority of that nutrient load? Don't want to forget the Lake Worth Lagoon. It doesn't get a lot of attention, but that is a third estuary, a third area that receives these destructive discharges. In total, then, there's, for phosphorus alone, over 400,000 pounds of phosphorus that entered the discharges in those 5 months. Now, the key here is that there's no treatment provided for the discharges to the estuaries. By contrast, the water that went to the Everglades, and in this case about 158,000 acre-feet of lake water did go down, it was treated. It was treated. And of that, then, by virtue of the treatment in the stormwater treatment areas, there was just about 10,000 pounds of phosphorus compared to 428,000 pounds of phosphorus. So that's the difference between adding a project to treat those lake releases, which is done south of the lake, versus not treating the water, which is done to the estuaries. So again, some obstacles and opportunities as we move forward. Let's talk a little bit about projects, publicly funded projects that were designed in part to treat a large volume of lake water. And by that I mean the stormwater treatment areas. In 1994, the Everglades Forever Act directed the agency, at the time the Water Management District, to send about 28% more water to the Everglades. That was the 1994 legislative mandate. Here we are 21 years later. So again, 1994, 28% more water. What that equated to for the stormwater treatment areas was a little over 250,000 acre-feet per year on average of lake water to be sent down to the Everglades. By comparison, historically, and that is historically after the CNSF project was built, roughly 100,000 acre-feet per year of water from the lake went down to the Everglades. By building and operating the SDAs as they were designed, that number was going to increase by 150%. Today, there's actually about 17,000 acres more treatment area than there was in the 1994 plan. Unfortunately, despite the increased acreage, there was a very disappointing decreasing trend of lake through the stormwater treatment areas. The good news, as I mentioned and actually started out the presentation, is in the last couple of years, there has been much greater effort to send water to treatment areas that have already been bought and paid for by the public. These stormwater treatment areas are designed to capture a tremendous amount of lake water. On the right-hand side of the curve, or the chart, you've got 2014 and 2015. The purple horizontal line represents kind of the historic volume of lake water, and that's about 100,000 acre-feet per year. And you can see there are 8 years prior to that not even the historic amount of lake water went to the Everglades. The great news is in 2014 and 2015, because of the collaboration and the efforts of the Water Management District and the Corps of Engineers, those numbers have bounced back up where we really want to see them. In 2014 alone, there was about 170,000 acre-feet. Not quite to the design average of 250,000, but certainly in 2015 alone, and this is only the first 7 months of the water year, there's been over 300,000 acre-feet of lake water to the SDAs, and that's just phenomenal. So thank you, Water Management District. And this has made the Corps' job a little bit easier. The more lake water that goes to the Everglades and is treated before it goes to the Everglades, the less pressure the Corps has to make releases to the estuaries. So there's tremendous collaboration, synergy for the two agencies. Okay, we talked about 2014. Let's talk about one STA. Okay, 2014 was also a great year for the performance of the STAs. Season and try to dump it all, but have a delivery every month of the year of water to the Everglades through the stormwater treatment areas, and particularly the dry season. Dry season represents the greatest opportunity to send lake water to the Everglades. The Everglades needs it, as we've seen in the previous presentations. There's capacity in terms of flood control levels of the conservation areas. The STAs themselves need water to avoid dry out and the other adverse impacts. And so that's the key. And so those STAs that receive lake water, their performance actually improved. One STA didn't receive it, STA 5-6, and there's some hydraulic problems and challenges to getting that water there. But STA 5-6 is in desperate need of water. And to the extent that we can connect Lake Okeechobee through a western route and deliver water to STA 5-6, I believe that treatment area will also achieve its performance goals, and then also we can actually increase the amount of water being sent to the Everglades. So we have an opportunity here, and that is to send lake water to STA 5-6. There's going to be some plumbing involved. I know the Water Management District has looked into this already, and I believe they're on board with trying to pursue that. The great news is that, guess what? The U.S. sugar lands, the footprint of those lands are right where they need to be for making this connection possible. There's an obstacle, though, and the obstacle has to do with the competition of funds. Recently, last month, in fact, the Water Management District awarded a $124 million project, a temporary project that disappears in 10 years. 10 years from now, we look back, and what do we have for $124 million? Nothing. That amount of money could have purchased about 16,000 acres of land for a long-term permanent solution. So it just begs the question, what analyses of alternatives were done to determine that $124 million was the best way to provide storage for the Caloosahatchee River watershed? There's also some questions about the dispersed water management in EVCO that I'm pursuing. For example, according to the district maps, the majority of that project is not even located in the Caloosahatchee watershed, and yet the project claims benefits to the watershed. So there's just some questions about this particular project. The good news is that each year it's subject to discussion by the governing board is subject to funding by both the legislature and the governing board. Perhaps the next time this project comes up for funding, perhaps there can be some answers to whether or not this really is the best project in the Caloosahatchee watershed to help the resource. 2015, as I mentioned, has been a banner year for sending lake water south, treating it before it sends to the Everglades, and as I mentioned earlier, do want to commend the Corps and the district for their actions. And it has eliminated, to date, now this may change in the next couple of months, but it has eliminated, both agencies told me that by sending this additional water south, it has eliminated the need to send these destructive discharges to the St. Lucie estuary particularly. And they're on track in 2015 to achieving a target that I've established of about 250,000 acre-feet of water during the dry season. And that's an achievable target, and they're on track to achieving that. So, and again, the fantastic news here is that the treatment areas continue to improve in their performance. And so the slide points out that the 3 treatment areas receiving a large amount of money, the concentrations are continuing to drop. Now this is roughly 18 months after the major lake releases to the STAs began, and we're still seeing improved benefits. STA 3/4 has been doing wonderful to begin with, and so it's holding steady as well.
Importance of both appropriations and in SEP's case, authorization, we can keep just marching down the line. We'll march down the line. The foundation projects and getting those foundation projects complete are so very important to see in the successful implementation of the CERT projects and moving on to Central Everglades. And just looking at this, from a overall standpoint and what's my ask of you, it's to stay engaged, maintain that open and cooperative dialogue. Let us know what you're thinking. We heard at lunch today, sometimes we're not going to see eye to eye, but it's making sure you come to the table and utilize, whether it's the NEPA process to be engaged or whether it's the IDS process we have starting in a couple of weeks. Get yourself involved, come to the table. I guess a quick show of hands, who participated in a SEP public workshops at some point? Okay, so definitely some hands out there. And for those of you who've been around, that's not the way the Corps does business. It is now, because people see how successful that was, and so we're just carrying that on into our next big effort. A key point is that second bullet, maintain a system-wide perspective for restoration. Major General Peabody spoke about it a lot in that, if you're only focused on your one little project, you lose sight of getting the big plan implemented. And so, I'll ask if you live in the South and C-111 South data is important to you, you know what, you better be pulling for Kissimmee River restoration, because if we can't get the obstacles and the appropriation squared away to get Kissimmee done, they're not going to come for C-111 South date. If you want C-43 done, you better be pulling for IRL South C-44, because completion of IRL South C-44 then sees resources being available to shift to C-43. So it's important that, wherever you are in southern Florida, wherever your favorite project is, it's realizing that there has to be some interrelatedness with our program. If the whole program wins, then all of our individual projects will win. Acknowledging that we have a plan, SERP is our plan. I received an email this past week from someone in the Missouri River Basin, and they want to know what our plan looks like. And so while they may have a plan, they don't have our plan. We have the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan. I was in Louisiana when we wanted to have the Comprehensive Louisiana Coastal Area Restoration Plan. We were told it couldn't be comprehensive. The last restoration program that could have comprehensive in its name was CERP. So it's realizing that we have a plan. Everyone recognizes that we have a plan. We just have to continue to work that plan. The idea of ongoing projects and promoting the planned projects, again, we're all in this one together. If we complete the projects we're working now, that gives us more opportunity to engage projects that we're going to continue to work, this whole system put together. The IDS workshops, those will start on January 26th. The second one will be February 2nd. We'll do our best to have follow-on meetings as those are required, but the task force is supporting us with those. For those, again, who participated in SEP, please come out, please get engaged. Let us know what you're thinking and how your projects can feed into that next increment of identifying our priorities. And lastly, again, stay engaged, maintain that open and cooperative dialogue. So with that, I thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate any discussions we have coming up.
lastly but not least, we'll have Mitch come up.
We're all saying. And specifically, I think what you're hearing is there's a lot of agreement on the fact that we recognize we need to send more water south. And when we send that water south, it needs to be clean. We recognize that in order to do that, there has to be a combination of projects and operational modifications. And so we're constantly looking for what are the projects that we can implement, how can we do it better, and we appreciate the input that we get from folks from RAC, from special interest groups, from our partners at the Corp. And so we appreciate all the input that we get. We also recognize that there are new alternatives and new opportunities that we need to pursue. And I'll say specifically, I think we need to be diligent about looking for additional storage and additional treatment north of the lake. If we're successful at doing that, it makes a lot of the downstream issues easier to solve. That's not to say that's the only issue. We need more storage and more treatment south of the lake. But we also need it north of the lake, and we need it in both of the estuary basins. The other thing that I'll say, when I got on the board, one of the things that I said I was wanted to focus on is we needed to be about getting projects completed. And so we need to have a plan and implement that plan. That plan unlocks the opportunities for us to be much more successful about moving and treating water. And I think, again, you've heard general consensus on those. In implementing all of those points, there's a couple of things that I'd like to share with you. One is, again, I have to compliment the working relationship and the involvement of the Corps. We've had a great year about getting to the business of getting projects implemented, resolving issues. And the Kissimmee River Basin, we've resolved outstanding credit issues that allows the Corps to move forward with implementing this project. And it's going to result in 30,000 acre-feet of storage north of the lake. And when you combine that with the other 100,000 acre-feet of storage, that's meaningful and important. We had great progress on 10 Mile Canal. We have gotten the SEP Chiefs report completed. And I think just as of Thursday, we saw that there's going to be legislation to advance that project and seek for funding. And so those are things that are critical and important in achieving the goals that we all want to see, which is let's be better stewards of the water, let's move more water south, and have it be clean. There are a number of projects that we have been implementing in the estuaries that are critical to solve some of the estuary issues. And you've heard about those, so I'll go through them quickly. But the C-44 storage facility, that is important. There's $60 million that's already been allocated for that project. There's 2 contracts underway that would result in 3,600 acre STA, as well as the 3,400 acre reservoir. Those projects are ongoing and will have a significant benefit to the East Coast reservoir basin. The C-43, we have heard that that's a project that is important for the West Coast. It does 2 things. One, there's a small storage component, but it helps address the Goldilocks concern that we have, which we need more water in the dry season, and that resolves over 70% of the minimum flows and levels issues in the dry period. So we're continuing to work on that. We're grateful for the $18 million that were allocated from the governor and the legislature about advancing that project. And let's be able to use that land now to store water in the interim. We're also moving forward with restoration strategies. We've had a lot of successes this year. The A1 flow equalization basin, and it is moving forward. The L8 flow equalization basin, stormwater treatment area 1 west expansion. The land swap was completed so that that land could be acquired and we could be moving forward. We've also been continuing to implement the science plan and look at, are there additional ways that we can accelerate water by adding additional conveyance features. And you've heard already a lot about the operational changes that we've made over the last 12 to 18 months. We've heard when we have comments about, you ought to take a look at this. Maybe you can consider that. And I'm very proud of the work that the staff has put in to be able to to test things and do it in a scientific manner based on data and analysis. And let's see what we can do to those STAs. And I'll agree, the STAs have been remarkable performers. We know that we can release more water if we do it in a steady manner. Those pulses are damaging, and if we get too much water, then the performance of those STAs begin to decline. And so you're right, over 300,000 acre-feet of water has been moved, and we're continuing to look at ways that we can do that better. One of the other things is there are operational constraints that we're looking to eliminate. And so moving forward with the C-111 and getting Contract 8 complete unlocks the opportunity for us to continue moving additional water to the south. And the last thing that I want to talk about is dispersed storage. Dispersed storage is not the answer. It is one of the tools that we have at our disposal to address how do we deal with additional water when we have it. And there's a number of projects that have been remarkably successful. I think Nicodemus Slough is going to be proven to be very successful. I'm thrilled with the way that the Hawkins project in Martin County has been implemented. I think that shows great promise. And there were some comments about the EVCO project, and I'll tell you, I'm open to have that conversation. We ought to have that conversation. One of the things that I will say, though, is if you look at 2013 and obviously the impacts and the damage that occurred as a result of that, if we hadn't moved forward to find options, where can we store water if we, and when we need it, and we had another one of those years, you'd be pointing your fingers at us. And so this is a project that I think has land in the basin in an area where we know we have surplus water. And it is a bridge project. I said when we had the governing board meeting that my priority was implementing projects that are already on plan. And if it came down to a challenge between funding of those projects, I'm going to support implementing the projects that are already on board. That's critical. We have to get those implemented. But as a bridge, in an interim, we need to have those opportunities where we can store additional water. And I think when we look out in the future, we look at the opportunity with El Nino that we might need to be doing some additional releases. And I think having the opportunity to have this property gives us an extra tool. If it does not work out, if it is not successful, if it doesn't meet the goals that we've established, we made sure that there's termination clauses in it. So I think it is an important piece. It is not the answer, and it is certainly a bridge opportunity that should be in our toolbox. And in closing, I agree with the comments that we've heard. We recognize 2013 was a bad year. We need to do a better job, and there's lots of components that need to go into place to make sure that that doesn't happen again. We need to have projects, we need to build projects, we need to implement the plan, we need to do better in operations. We need to continue to work on collaboration with the agencies, with the public, with the affected communities. And I believe the district has been doing a very good job, and the partnerships speak for themselves. Funding is a critical item. We can only do what we have funding for, and there is a competition for resources. And so being focused and diligent about here's the project that will unlock the opportunity for us to move to the next project, getting those in the right sequence, that's important. And so as a closing comment, I agree, you need to stay engaged, you need to participate in the IDS process so that we make sure that the projects come online in the right sequence so that we maximize the benefits and the opportunities. I think we need to focus on completing projects that we have planned. And through everybody's participation and comment and input and willingness to work together, I believe that we're going to achieve it. We're going to get more done than we've seen in a long time. We've got $5 billion worth of projects that are ready to go and be implemented that will go a long way. It won't solve the problem, but it'll go a long way to addressing the issues that we have before us. And so with that, thank you very much for your time and attention.